everybody, it's Jen. I'm here today to teach you a absolute fan favorite, the zipper bag. I hope you are looking forward to this. If you are a little bit scared or intimidated, I'm gonna show you all the tricks and things that you need to pay attention to, and then boom, you'll be off the crazy bag lady after that. All right, so we are going to be making this bag here today. This is one of the few zipper bags that you get with this collection here. And it's got a cute little saying on there, LOL. So I'll take you through making the front of the bag first. Now with that being said, typically our zipper bags will take 2 hoopings, all right? So you're gonna load one of the design files first. In this case, we're gonna be loading the front, and all of the instruction in the tutorial will tell you that, so you'll be able to follow along with that reading as well. First thing I wanna do is get my hoop ready. So I'm gonna use a piece of no-show mesh here, and I'm gonna go ahead and hoop that. Now, I've already gone ahead and done that. So if you're doing that, if this is your first time, if you're still a beginner, one thing you really want to pay attention to with your no-show is making sure that when this is hooped here, that it's nice and flat, it's nice and taut, just like a drum. You don't want to have any like rippling inside there. If you do, that can really compromise the design. So what I'll do is go ahead and put this on, and we will be ready to go. Okay, now one of the questions I get asked a lot of the times, and it's not just with this particular project, but it's with a lot of projects that we do at Anita Goodesign, is what color thread should I start with? And I always think a really good rule of thumb is going to be with the same color fabric you'll be using. So if I'm using the black material as my main bag fabric, you are going to be okay with threading a black thread. So I've already gone ahead and taken care of that. So I'm ready to go here. I have my design loaded on my machine. Now, for those of you who are following along, or you'll be doing this later, I do want to point something out that's really important, because you're gonna think that you might be making a mistake or something's wrong, and that's not what's happening. So on my machine, my design is loaded in this orientation where I can read the LOL upright, left to right. Correct? Now, if I were to hit embroidery as if I'm ready to start my project, it's gonna give me this prompt telling me that something's just not right. And what it's saying is I need a larger hoop, but that's not really the case. All I need to do is take my design, go ahead and rotate that in my hoop. Now to do that, you'll have to just be familiar with your machine and how to use the edit features, but I'm gonna have to go in and click on my edit, and I'll just rotate that bag 90 degrees. Once I click OK, I'll be good to go. So here we go. The first step in our design is going to be the placement stitch. Placement stitch will go around 1 time. It's gonna show me the area in which my fabric will be placed. That's another really important thing that takes place in our designs, because if you're really not sure what size piece of fabric you need, you can always go by the placement stitch. Or maybe you pre-cut fabric ahead of time, and you're realizing as your placement stitch is stitching out, this fabric is not gonna be working for me, then you can go ahead and cut your fabric. Now, what I wanna do here is I'm using a black fabric to begin with. This is a cotton, it looks like. I don't know if you got a close-up on the bag here, but this used a twill. It's okay to change the fabrics that you're using. That's the fun of it. We get to play with fabric, we get to play with designs. Now, when you place your fabric, you do want to make sure that you're placing your fabric with the right side facing up. If it's not directional fabric, hey, no problem, doesn't even matter. But if there is a direction, you do want to make sure that that fabric is placed up. I have some wrinkles in here, so I just want to smooth that out. You do want to cover the entirety of the placement stitch and then I'm ready to run my next step. The next step in the design is the tacking stitch. Now, all of our tacking stitches will go around twice, giving you a 2-ply, making sure that the fabric that you're using is really secured to that stabilizer that's in the hoop. Now, a lot of times, you'll see me kind of using my hands throughout this project. Now, a lot of times, and I remember when I was a first timer and a beginner, I was terrified of this machine. I was really scared of the needles. So if that's the case, you could go ahead and use tape. But because I'm a little bit more familiar with it now, more comfortable, as the machine is going, you might notice me, or you might have noticed some of your friends just kind of using their hands and smoothing out the fabric as they go. All right, so this is finishing up here. Once that's done, I am getting ready for my next step. This is going to be step number 3, and this is going to be my first piece of applique. Now, applique is really fun because you get to choose from an assortment of fabrics. And for this one, actually, this one's a little bit boring except for that fun kind of vinyl in the center. For the design that I have on my machine, I am going to be using this funky material. This is actually dancewear material. So it's kind of like spandex. I don't know if you have any like grandbabies at home where you made their little dance costumes for them, but you can have fun with the different fabrics you're using. I have a couple other ones back here that I can show you. We have this fun kind of funky green color. Now the other thing too is with this green one especially, I have this really shiny iridescent pattern on the front, but then if you look at the back side, let me just unfold this here. The backside is solid, and it's a really nice, vibrant green color. There is no reason why you couldn't almost, you have a 2-for-1 here. You have this fun shiny side. You also have that fun green side. Don't be afraid to experiment with the different fabrics that you're using when you're stitching out projects that use applique, or if you're stitching out this zipper bag. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and run step 3 of this design. This is going to be the placement stitch for our first piece of applique. And again, that placement stitch is just gonna go around one time, showing me the area in which I need to cover with my applique fabric. And once it's completely finished running, I'm ready to place my applique. So here we go. I'm going to take my applique fabric again, making sure to place that right side facing up, right? This one is the back. We have the front shiny side. I'm going to place that right side facing up. I have a nice large piece, enough to carry the space. Again, a reminder that if you're not sure if your piece of fabric is going to fit, you can look and see how large you need to cut that piece. So you can do cut as you go with applique, which is really nice. So next, my tacking stitch. This tacking stitch, same as with that main fabric. It's going to go around 2 times, giving you a 2-ply, really securing that in place very nicely. This material lays nice and flat, so you don't have to really worry about smoothing that out. And then once it's completely finished tacking, we're gonna have to move on to our next step, which is gonna be trimming it out. Trimming is a really important kind of factor when you are working with applique. Reason being, if you kind of get a wonky trim, then you're not going to really like the way that your applique gets covered with its finishing stitch. All right, so I kind of want to show you that really quickly here. Now it's really easy, it's gonna be really easy to cut on a nice flat surface. So I have some items in the way. I'm just gonna move those out so I have a nice flat surface, and then I can go ahead and start cutting. First rule of cutting is you always want to trim flush right up to that tacking stitch. making sure you don't snip any of the stitches, and you don't want to leave any extra. You don't want any seam allowance on your applique. I love to use a double curved scissor. You can kind of see it curves up there. You have a nice sharp tip. These are excellent when you are working with materials that have kind of a curve, or you need to get into a little crevice. So I'm going to go here, start cutting, and you can see cutting right up close there. Let me go around, and off we go. So go ahead and take your time. Move slow if you need to, don't rush it. I'm already judging my cutting, by the way, if in case you're looking at yours and judging yours. I'm judging mine, and I'm like, man, this could be better. And if you need to move your hoop around to get a better cut, go ahead and do that. I like to remove some of the applique, make it smaller so it's not as bulky or in my way. I'll do that. And then, I need to get in this little corner a bit more. There we go. And then just remember, I'm going to show you kind of an area that I'm going to clean up here in a moment, because I have a little bit too much hanging out for my liking. You'll learn along the way how close or how not close you can cut it. You'll learn that as you go and as you get more experience. But you might be able to see I kind of have a lot over here down in this area. So I might just go ahead and trim that up just a smidge. Now what's going to happen is, all of our appliques have some sort of finishing stitch. So in this case, the finishing stitch on this project is a satin. If you leave too much fabric or too much applique hanging out beyond that tacking stitch, what's going to happen is once that satin stitch goes all the way around that design, you might have some fibers that stick out of the satin. If you are noticing that, let that be a warning to you that, hey, you need to cut your applique a little bit closer. Now some of the cuts I have here aren't great, but I think I'm going to leave them alone, because what I'd like to do is show you what that oopsie looks like in case. Now it might cover up. If it doesn't, I can show you, and if it does, then we're good. All right, now from here, you're just going to repeat those same steps, right? So you'll have two other appliques to go with. You have the O, you have the L, and once that's completely done, it's going to it's going to run that finishing stitch. So with the other appliques, you can just repeat that same process, running that placement stitch, making sure you place your fabric right side facing up, and then running that tack down, and then of course you want to trim. So I'm not going to show you those next two. That'd be a little bit redundant. So I think you get the point just working off of this first applique with that first L in the zipper bag. And then how the design will finish, your last few steps are going to be that finishing stitch. Now, actually, I'm not going to go ahead and run that for time purposes, but you can see if you're looking up close that the L I just did is this very last L over here. This one is going to have a nice, clean finishing satin stitch. You don't have any of those fibers sticking out of here, so that cut was really nice. Now, I'm going to move on and get ready for the second part of our zipper bag. Okay, so my front of the design of my zipper bag has finished up, and what I was kind of talking about earlier did happen, and I do want to point that out and show that to you. You can see that I'm going to use my scissor here to really show you, but if you look along this L, see what's happening here? You can really see it in this kind of crevice there. I got a cut that I don't really like, and you can see sticking out from beyond the satin that I have these little fibers, those little white fibers. I even have kind of this corner of the whole fabric there, so I don't like that. So again, you'll start to know and understand where exactly you need to cut. Don't be afraid to get right up next to that tack down line. And I am using kind of a specialty material. Sometimes those are a little bit more tricky to trim, but just do the best you can, and don't get discouraged. Keep practicing, keep playing with the different fabrics, and eventually you're gonna, boom, light bulb's gonna go off and you'll be tooting your horn, bragging about all the little bag projects that you're creating. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is get ready for the second portion of my design, which is gonna be the back of the bag. To do that, I do need to obviously remove this from my embroidery machine. And what I will do from here is I'm gonna cut this out. I'll take the, here, I can do this right now. I'm gonna pop the design out of my hoop. And what I wanna show you is where I'm going to cut. So with this design, and it's a project design, most of our instructions will tell you to trim the design out, leaving a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now with your project designs, so like the zipper bag right here, you'll be okay if you even just left a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So that'll be fine. Trim that all around the 4 edges there. So let me get that trimmed, and then we'll get going on the back portion of our bag, and we're almost done. All right, we are ready for our second hooping and to finish up our zipper bag project. You obviously want to make sure that you are exiting out of your last design file. So the front of the bag design file here, you want to exit out of that. I've trimmed this down now. I should probably show you that. This I left a little bit more seam allowance than I typically would. So I got the 1/2 of an inch here, but remember I did mention that you could cut it at a 1/4 of an inch and you'll be A-okay. So I've deleted out that last design file, loaded up my back file. Now my back file is gonna be where I attach the zipper, easy peasy if you've never done that before. We'll have to hoop another hoop with no-show mesh. We will typically use no-show mesh with our bag, our zipper bag designs. If we don't, we will specify that. So the hoop here is, again, it is nice and taut. You can see that it's nice and flat. There are no ridges in there. Those ridges could essentially give you some compromise in your design. Your design could come out a little wonky there. I'm gonna go ahead and push this on here. And the same, wait, actually this one I don't think I need to rotate. Let me check that on my machine. Nope, it's ready. Okay, so this one's ready to go. And the first thing we're going to do is run our placement stitch. I'm keeping that black thread in here to put down my fabric in a moment. Let me run this first stitch, the placement stitch. Remember, that only goes around one time. It's a guide. It's gonna show you exactly where you need to place your fabrics. And just a little reminder that if you're not sure about the size of those fabrics, remember that that placement stitch can really guide you in terms of how large or small you're gonna need to be trimming out your base fabrics or even your applique fabrics. So as this is stitching here, you can kind of see that it's got these weird, funny lines. I'm gonna get into that momentarily. We really wanna pay attention to that part first, because this is how we will place our zipper. Now, if none of you have ever completed a zipper bag of ours, you're gonna be really impressed with how easy it is to attach the zipper right on your embroidery unit, following really just 2 steps here. So let's take a peek at these 3 lines. You can see these 3 lines here. This is going to help us to align our zipper. Now to do that, we want to place our zipper within those 3 lines, okay? So I'm going to place my zipper here. I want to make sure that my teeth are facing up. That is probably one of the most important tips you will ever get in the instruction of your zipper bags. You want the teeth facing up, because if you face them down later on, you're gonna have a beautiful bag, but it's not gonna be functioning because you can't open it. So you will place the teeth of your zipper facing up. If you kind of lift it here, I'm kind of just lifting it a little bit. I can see that the teeth is right over top, that middle of those 3 lines, and then the top and bottom of my zipper is going to be covering up the top and bottom of those 3 lines. Now, you don't want to place your zipper so that you have one of the lines showing. If you do that and you run your tacking stitch for your zipper, what's going to happen is A, you're either going to tack right on top of the teeth, which is not good, or B, it's going to tack very, very closely to the zipper teeth that you will be unable to open up the bag later on. Now, another question I often get, and while I'm talking about this, I'm going to tape my zipper in place here so it doesn't shift. Another big question I will get when I am working on zipper bags is, does it matter where the head of my zipper is placed? And the answer to that is no. You obviously don't want that right smack dab in the center of the hooping. You do want the head of your zipper to be on the outermost side. It can either be over here on this side or it can be on the opposite side like mine is. And then once you have that placed and you are happy with the decision you're making, then we can tape that down. Now, I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to this, so I'm taking a little bit longer than normal, but of course I want my tacking stitch to be exactly where it needs to be. All right, I think I'm good. I'm gonna run that tacking stitch here. I'm gonna use this dark thread so you can see what's happening. If you don't like the thread to show, then it's okay if you use a matching thread. So because I'm using a white piece of zipper tape, then what I would want to do to match that is use a white thread. So it's going to attach on both sides there. And the tacking stitch, again, it's going to go over twice, giving you a 2-ply, giving you nice and secure, a nice hello, can I talk today? Anybody who ever comes to my events knows that I do that all the time. Nothing's changed. A nice and secure zipper with that 2-ply tacking stitch. Now I can see sometimes when you are stitching out on your machine, the tail of the thread, it might get caught like it kind of did here. So what I'm just gonna rip that out there. I don't need that. I'm going to clean that up a little bit. So that always happens. So if that does, don't worry about it. It's okay. Those are just things that you'll learn. They happen along the way if that's never happened to you before. Now that's it actually, before I move on. This is it. That is all it takes to attach a zipper right in your embroidery hoop. Wow, can you believe it? It's like mind explosion knowing that I can make all of these beautiful zipper bags with just placing a piece or placing a zipper right within certain placement stitches. Okay. Moving forward, what I want to do is place my fabric. I need to cheat for a second because I kind of forgot which fabric places first. So I want to make sure I'm doing it correctly. You'll see my hoop moving. I'm just cheating. I'm going back and forth in the steps so that I know. Okay, so we are going to be placing this half of the bag first, the fabric first. Now to do that and to have nice clean seams, we like to use our fold and flip method. It's very easy. To do that, I'm going to take a piece of fabric. Now mine is not directional. You can probably see that I have, black cotton on this side, black cotton on this side. Sometimes you'll have black cotton on the front and then you'll have like a whitish color on the back. That's important because if you were using a directional fabric, you would want to make sure that you're placing your fabric right side facing down. And because we're going to be flipping it over this way, majority of my fabric is going to be placed in the opposite direction. So if you just watch me here, I'll show you. I'm going to take the one edge of my base fabric and I'm going to align it right with the edge of the zipper right here. You can see that. I just want to make sure that I'm going past that placement stitch, that outermost placement stitch. can smooth that out. Next step, now you won't be able to see this because I didn't change my threads, but the next step that's running is a folding stitch. That folding stitch is going to go twice, just like our tacking. It's going to give us a nice and secure 2-ply folding stitch. That folding stitch is going to allow us to very nicely fold our fabric over, giving us nice, crisp, clean seams. Nothing raw, nothing raggedy. All right, so this is going to wrap up. I'm gonna take my fabric, woo, and then I'm going, oh, hey, how you doing over there? I don't know, what are you? No idea. Okay, I'm gonna fold that fabric over. Now, when you fold it over, a couple things to keep in mind. If you can see, you might be able to see this, you might not, but you could tell that I just delicately folded that over. Now when I do that, there's kind of this like lip here. The fabric, I guess the best way for me to describe it is fluffy right now. It's kind of sticking up. You don't want it like that. You want it nice and taut. So when you flip that over, do not be afraid to pull that nice and taut there. I'm gonna give it a finger crease. You could go ahead and tape down. What I'm gonna do is just hold it in place and off we go. This will run the tacking stitch. And then our first piece of base fabric will be attached. And all we'll have to do is our second piece and then the back. Fun, almost done, almost done. This part doesn't take very long. It's really only, this one is only 7 steps, so pretty quickly. What's taking a while is all my talking here, telling you things to make sure of. Sometimes people always forget that this bean stitch that's running right now does run right along with that, or parallel to the zipper teeth. So just make sure that you don't accidentally stop your machine beforehand and not finish that tacking stitch. I have seen that happen, so just a little warning. Okay, now I'm ready to do the opposite side. I'm just going to, everything I did on this first side, switching it over, going to do that on the opposite side. So this time, majority of my fabric is going to be over here because I'm going to flip it over to this side. I'm going to take one edge. If you're using a directional fabric, that needs to be right side facing down. I'll take one edge of my fabric and align it with the bottom of my zipper, and then I will run that folding stitch. So that's going to be running there. Yeah, that's fun. So while this is going, I do want to show you, now you do get a couple of zipper bag designs. This one is talking to me right now. Coffee is my spirit animal. I need this as soon as I am done instructing y'all. I am heading towards my cup of joe. So, and you can see you have that little zipper in the back. I'll show you a couple more in a little bit here. I'm gonna flip this. All right, we're ready to flip our fabric again, nice and taut. Ooh, I like this side. I'm not kind of reaching all funky like. Okay. Smoothing that out, nice and taut, finger crease, so you have a nice crisp seam. Again, I just like to hold mine. If you want to tape in place, you can. You may have noticed I have plenty of fabric to use. That's, I mean, it's unnecessary for me to really be using this much fabric, and if I were doing this at home, I probably would not. I would get a cut that's a little bit closer to the material. You know, we don't like to waste material, so I'm gonna get a cut that's closer to the size of my project, but for instructional purposes, I really want y'all to get the point and see what we're doing. So I do have a little bit more fabric than needed. With that being said, also keep in mind, make sure you're checking like your materials list and your sizing of your design, because that's going to really instruct you in terms of which size embroidery hoop you need to use. And you always want to use the embroidery hoop that is closest to the size of your design. Sometimes if we get too large, the design could fall out, and then we have to start over if we don't have like a brand new top of the line machine that will allow us to realign it if that happens. So it's always a good rule of thumb to keep your hoop closest to the size of your design. All right, now this portion I almost forgot, and I almost forgot to do this. This part of the design is going to be the most important part. I'm going to let you all stew for a minute and guess what that is. If you haven't guessed, it's opening the zipper. And of course, I almost forgot to open the zipper, which is no bueno. So what you want to do, of course, just go ahead and open that zipper. Now, our instructions, they'll typically tell you to go about halfway. I will tell you, I like to go a little bit more. 3/4 of the way is good. And the reason I like to go a little bit more is because I've made these bags so many times that I've noticed that if I just push it a little bit past that halfway mark, when I'm going to be turning the bag in a little bit here, and if I go just a little bit more than that halfway mark, it's easier for me to get my hand in and all that good stuff. All right, you're also going to need the first part of your bag, so that front portion of your bag will need this here. And our last step is going to be securing all of these pieces in place. So we're gonna run the tacking stitch. We have to place the top portion of our bag first. Now to place this, I want to lay it so that it's right side facing down. And then do your best to align your tacking stitches. Now this was a bad idea to tell you to match the fabric, because now it's hard for me to see where the tacking stitches are. Let me make sure we're okay over here. And you'll do this too. You'll do this too at home or wherever you're stitching out this project. Another thing, I'm gonna use this pink tape to hold this in place. This pink tape is embroidery tape. It's fantastic. It holds everything in place. The other thing, ooh, let me show you. This is a piece that I had used before on the zipper. This pink embroidery tape will actually last you, should last you through the projects that you're working on. So I don't have to untape and throw that out. I can untape and use it again. It's still super sticky. That's exactly what I want. And I'm gonna go ahead and, just to be on the safe side, I'm gonna tape all 4 sides down. Sometimes you may have used like painter's tape. If you have, you probably already know that, well, that stuff doesn't always work the best. So that's why I like to talk about the pink tape and what it does. I know a lot of y'all do like to use, it's like medical tape, but used as embroidery tape, and a lot of your dealers will carry it. But it looks just like medical tape. It works fantastic. The pink tape, that medical tape, I don't really know, I forget the name of what that actually is, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Those are really great tapes to use whenever you're working with an in the hoop project. All right, I'm gonna run my last step here. This is my tacking stitch. Tacking stitch is gonna go around twice, remember, giving you that 2-ply stitch. It's going to really secure the design. And don't worry about that going over the zipper, it's okay. You might make a little noise, of course, because you're working with that, that other nylon material that the zipper is made of, but you'll be fine. The only thing you really want to be careful of is when you do open the zipper, you know, I did mention that I tend to go a little bit farther than that halfway mark. Don't open it too far, because you do not accidentally want like the head of your zipper, that little, I don't know, beep, 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 beep thing. You don't want that outside, because your needle is not going to be able to go through that, and that's not going to be fun. So you do want to make sure that you're keeping that zipper right inside. All right, so I am completed here. And the last thing I'm going to do is, let me remove this from my machine here. I'm going to take my tape off, maybe. And the last thing I need to do, save that for any other projects I got, is cut the bag out of the hoop. Let me show you what it looks like here. First, so I'm gonna unhoop this. Boop. Boop. Okay, so I have my bag. It's in the piece of stabilizer, so it's flopping around all over the place. You can see the LOL is backwards on there. What I want to do is trim this down. So I'm going to trim this down, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to flip that bag. All right, we're about wrapped up with our zipper bag project. Just a few more things to take note of. First off, I've trimmed this out of my stabilizer. I've left myself that 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can see that all the way around here. Another thing that I went ahead and took care of was clipping those corners at 45 degrees. That's gonna give me a nice rounded edge there, or corner, when I turn the bag right side out. I do get a lot of questions before I flip this. I do get a lot of questions on, hey, if I wanted to add a lining to a bag that is unlined, like the one we just created, am I able to do that? The answer is yes. You will be able to do that, and it just so happens that we have a blog about how to do just that thing on our website. So if you check out our blog, you can see how to line an unlined bag. You'll just have to kind of play around moving back and forth on the steps of your design, but you'll be able to attach that lining no problem. All right, the next thing I want you to pay attention to is this area here where the stabilizer is covering the zipper. So that white strip is our zipper. What I need to do is go ahead and remove the stabilizer from that area. And I'm gonna do so using a seam ripper, all right? Now, I've already gotten rid of quite a bit. I am just gonna get rid of this last bunch here. Hopefully I can do this while it's in that machine there. Usually it's in front of me. But once I get rid of this, it's gonna expose my zipper. Let me take this down. And then we'll be able to flip. And how did I do this? Okay, finally, hello. Okay, then I'll be able to flip. So now my stabilizer is completely gone from the zipper area, and you can see where I've unzipped it. That's where I'll be able to turn the bag from. So I'm gonna go ahead and just turn my bag right through that zipper area. Now you might wanna use some tools. I'm looking around to see if I have like a little poking stick or whatever to push out my corners. You can use little tools. If you have chopsticks even will work to push your corners out. If you can be super, super careful with your scissors, you could use those. I would not recommend that unless you are a professional already. Boom, zipped up, and voila, we have our LOL zipper bag. And then before you go, I just want to show you some of the other really cute designs that you're gonna get with the zipper bag collection here. You have a little popcorn, little cute typewriter, and then my personal favorite is this very, very adorable little sneaker. How fun. Real creative with the different fabrics here. All right, so I hope y'all enjoyed learning about our zipper bag. Please, please, please stitch these out. Send them to us on our social media so we can see all the things you're creating at home. And bye-bye for now.